It's a great thing to do. I know writing the last few years with some of the things I went through really helped me, and it has brought things to my life that I didn't anticipate. I encourage everybody, even if you never publish anything, it's good to write things down, get them out of your head, get them on paper. And if it's good, go sneak it in the library. You never know what might happen. Good little story to end the day on, because that will do it for this version of Heard Tell. Love to have you reach out. Make sure you leave a comment and a rating. You can directly contact us. We'd love to hear from you. You got questions, epistles, comments? Love to hear it. At HeardTellShow at gmail.com, at HeardTell on the Twitter.com. Me and our guests, most of us have Twitter accounts. We always put those Twitter accounts on the little graphics as we're talking down here. Mine will be on that side. Theirs will be on that side. Reverse camera. It takes me a minute to figure out which way I'm going. So wherever you and yours are across the street around the world, thank you so much for giving us the most precious thing you have, your time. We appreciate it. We'll never waste it. We're always going to respect it. And we'll do it again tomorrow. So we hope you and yours are well. We hope you are well fed. Talk to you tomorrow on Heard Tell.
All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.
Well, hey, y'all, it's Holly Brewer
and Amy Ludwig and Kristen Ludwig
from Just Think, the podcast where we don't want to tell you what to think. We just challenge you to do it. We're happy to have some of our episodes featured right here on 106.7 The Big Talker on Saturdays at 11 a.m. So we hope you join us in the conversation, and most importantly, just think.
If you want to talk about culture and politics without all the caterwauling, then you'll love Heard Tell Radio with me, your host, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m. right here on The Big Talker. Catch it on the Listen Live tab on the app or watch on the Facebook page.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court, claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating a lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear Riverwatch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds, and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
I'm a boat builder. It's a tough job that takes time, patience, and precision. It's also incredibly rewarding. How many people can say they built a boat from scratch? In our area, there's a great need for people who can build and repair boats. I turned my love for life on the water into a career that I truly enjoy. I went to CFCC for 2 years, got my training, and now I look forward to work every day. You can too. Visit cfcc.edu/boatbuilding and get started today.
Listen to Tom Goolsby on The Chad Adams Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
That's right, it's time to get up, boys and girls. Face the sun, reveille, up and at 'em. It's going to be warmer today, it's going to be sunnier today, it's going to be a fun day. Because we're all about to go crazy, and if we don't get a little sunshine and outdoors, we're all going to just come undone, aren't we? Just be prepared to pay $7 an hour to park at the beach. In fact, if you're a native or a local, we're going to charge you more, even though it's off season. Welcome back to the Asylum on the Big Talker. Absolutely no plan this morning. Not unusual. But catching wind of some of the other conversations. One of them brought to us by Jeff Rivenbark and our friends at WWAY News. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. Now, I'm trying to get another guy on here. He's a geologist or a hydrologist. I think he's a geologist. And one evening he bent my ear when I had mentioned, when the peak of the Chemours thing was going on, and, he's a smart guy. I asked him about it. He said, "Oh, you think that's a problem? Take a look at what's in the water table. Take a look at the amount of chemistry, chemicals, medicines, drugs that are in the water table that we cannot filter out because we do not know what they are. We cannot recognize them and filter them because the companies that make this garbage are not required to disclose what is in there. So if you can't recognize a molecule, you can't remove it. The earth doesn't recognize it, so there's nothing to filter it out. Normally when rain comes down from the sky, it filters through the grass and the rain and the roots and everything else, and by the time it hits the water table, it's been scrubbed, basically. But with the sheer tonnage of Xanax and Zoloft and erectile dysfunction medicines and everything else that we don't know what they are because the company is not required to disclose their chemical constructs, we don't have a way to filter for it. So your kids... Yeah, and you think that buying bottled water makes a difference. The bottled water comes from the same source. And if we can't filter it through the earth to get rid of it, then no, we can't filter it through the water. I mean, we can't run it through a man-made filter and do any better because nothing recognizes these molecules and they slide right through. So yeah, your bottled water, and I know I would like to do the test or get a hold of this guy because he did a test on this. And they found chemicals like Zoloft and Paxil and the ED meds and everything else in our water supply from the water table underground. So the Chemours is literally just on the surface. And Toxic Free North Carolina. Originally filed October 14, 2020. This has actually been going on much longer. This has been going on since the mid-90s, early 90s, when people started trading cocaine for Xanax. MDMA. I mean, all the illegal chemicals as well, but it's the illegal chemical, or it's the legal chemicals. It's the ones that we're selling by the pounds. These mood elevators. And of course, we've been experimenting with this since the 50s. But like much of developing technology in the hands of human beings on planet Earth, there wasn't a lot of thinking ahead. Hey, just because we can do this, should we? What will be the consequences? Well, nobody seemed to ask that question then, and now we're stuck with a poisoned, contaminated water supply. And it's not just a local problem. This is going to be primarily a United States problem because we consume the most drugs of all the countries. I would almost bet combined. And I'm saying legal and illegal. Zoloft and Paxil and Xanax and ED meds. I mean, one of the primary reasons why I stopped watching any programmed television is due to the advertisements for medicines. The doctor is not supposed to validate your desire to be prescribed a magic pill that you saw on television. The doctor's there to tell you what you need and what you need to do. That's one of my favorite scenes in Fight Club when he goes in and he's talking to himself in his head while talking to the doctor. Give me the red ones, give me the yellow ones with the blue stripes that'll let me do this. And the guy's like, look, man, just chew a ginger root and take a nap. True medicine can be based on simple things like food and rest. Let your medicine be your food, let your food be your medicine, that sort of thing. But no, here in America, we're sold on the magic bullet. And I think one critic's take on the banning of mouse is along those same lines. We get into it and we realize there's no Bellerophon to this chimera. There's no hero to this story. It's just dark. And that's what we're experiencing with these chemicals. It's just going to continue to get darker and darker and darker without anybody paying attention until one day we realize all of the entire population is now physically addicted to the crap that's in the water. And we don't know what these cocktails are going to do. Because again, since we cannot filter out these different medicines and chemical compositions, they're in the water table. And that's what goes in your bottled water. That's what goes in your coffee maker. That's what goes in your concentrated orange juice. That's what goes in your hot tea. And we have an entire generation that has no choice but to consume this. So anybody who wants to be a vegan or a health nut, you're boned. You have no choice. It is the water supply has been contaminated. You know, everybody was up in arms when I was a kid about fluoride in the water. Man, y'all ought to take a sample now. And we can kind of recognize what's going on because we can recognize that these items do not belong in water, but we don't really have a way of filtering them out en masse. Now, because of the scale of difference between the water table and the ocean, it will take a lot longer, but it is considerably possible that every fish, whale, octopus, and squid in the ocean, all your favorite seafoods, will end up with amounts of ED medicine in their bodies because the water's contaminated and they're now swimming in it. They live in this. If it hasn't already happened in the creek and the rivers, and that's not just Kimmers, whatever, however it's pronounced. You got Pfizer, you got anybody who's making medicine that's being advertised on television. And all of that comes out of your body into the wastewater treatment center and back into the water table out in the drainage field through the earth, which is, normally how it's supposed to work. When you have organic chemicals that the earth can say, oh, yeah, here, tree can use this, grass can use this, everything else becomes purified, clean H2O back down into the water table. But we have ruined that. Personally, I'm not so much concerned about the short-term effects of Kimmers, et cetera, et cetera. What I'm worried about is the long-term accumulative effect of all of these chemicals that do not have any way of counter removal from the water cycle. I mean, technically, from what I understand, distilling the water is probably the only way to make sure that you're not getting these compounds, and not by choice. You can't turn it off. You can't choose to not drink contaminated water. You don't have a choice. The choice now is to find a solution and a way to correct this problem. And that's going to start with one of the biggest uphill battles this country has ever known, and that's going up and holding Big Pharma to account. And the problems along with Big Pharma, and again, I'm not a smart guy, but the ones that I see are going to be that, one, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of drug companies and a lot of subsidiaries and a lot of laboratories. So who did it? It's like chasing down who did this little bat crazy thing that's taken over the world. And of course, when something bad happens, nobody wants to be honest about it. When something good happens, everybody wants to be front and center on that. But when something bad happens, nobody wants to say, I did that, I'm sorry. It usually takes one guy saying, nope, I didn't. You have to prove it. Nobody saw me do it. Can't prove anything. And then we have to spend even more money and resources to prosecute or investigate and prosecute. Greedy, selfish human beings. That's what we are. And our rationale of because we can, we should, is really doing more damage. But I mean, if any of you have grandchildren and you have to feed them a bottle of formula now and again, there's a lot more than what's in the formula when you mix it up with water. And that's the same water that the cows are drinking that gets into their milk. Just like the mercury that we're discovering in fish because of the contaminants that we've done years ago. This is not something that's like active, reactive within minutes or hours or days. This is 20, 30 years. And over the past 20, 30, 40 years, we've been pumping tons and tons of antidepressants, mood elevators, and erectile dysfunction and other magic pills into a population of 300 million plus. ADHD, Adderall, whatever else, Ritalin. So we have this massive chemical cocktail that we flush down the toilet and out into our water supply. Because, the water cycle recycles itself. When you send that out into the drainage field, your grass becomes green and the worms enjoy good life. And by the time the water trickles all the way down through the earth back into the water table so we can use it again, it's supposed to have been purified by the earth. And that normally happens. If you're not familiar with the water cycle, that's a normal process. That's how rain barrels work. It's just a macrocosm of how the earth filters water. But it can't filter this stuff out because there's nothing that can use it. And that's how it works, right? So when you take your waste and you send it out into the field and the plants absorb the nutrients and materials in there that they can use, leaving behind nothing but H2O. But since a plant doesn't know what to do with Zoloft, grass doesn't know what to do with ED meds, they don't take their part, and it just the rest of it just filters with the water right down into the table. And we have no choice but to drink, cook, shower in contaminated water. And no matter how much this infrastructure bill that our Democratic representative, Mr. Price, wants to talk about how it's going to be a clamor and a fight, the legislation within his own state decided to give away about the same amount of money we're going to receive from the Build Back Better plan on this aerospace technology vaporware, right? We're looking at a tick over $100 million according to this chart, if I'm reading it right. And we're about to piss away $100 million. And none of it is going to help the people that are being poisoned and contaminated right here in the southeast North Carolina area. I would even go so far as to say the EPA was a good idea. Unfortunately, we have pulled their fangs. They no longer have the power or the oversight, the intimidation factor. If the EPA really had power, we would know what's being dropped into the ocean, what's being dropped in the water. We would know what these chemical compounds are, and we would have made the chemical company provide us a way to extract and remove these contaminants from the water. But they don't. They don't have the power. There's no compulsion. Because all the lobbying and all the money that's involved in pharmaceuticals, again, this is going to be the bloodiest uphill battle to make the Ukraine look like a street fight. And that's within our own borders. That's within this little tiny corner of the state. But it's United States. I'm sure they have this problem to a much smaller degree because they have things like healthcare in other countries, including mental health care. They don't separate the parts of the body and provide them each with their own health care. You might have a specialist, but you don't need separate coverage for mental health and separate coverage for your eyeballs and separate coverage for your teeth and separate coverage for your toes and separate coverage for your heart. And we're just going to chop the human body up into profitable parcels through insurance and not do anything about the systemic problem of a contaminated water supply based on the profits made from all of these pharmaceutical companies manufacturing magical pills that we consume by the ton. And that's not even getting into the crazy stuff like fentanyl and heroin and, man. Because all of this stuff goes somewhere. And if anybody's seen the movie Dune, their concept behind water isn't too far off. And when you live in a desert, raised in a desert, you see the water cycle a little more clearly because there's not a lot of it. So our water table is an incredibly precious resource. So precious that when a bunch of people came out to our state and decided they wanted to have the lush green lawns they had in Florida, no. You can't do that here. Your yard, your grass, this little sod is limited to 3 feet by 9 feet or something. I don't know what the dimensions are, but you're limited to so many square feet of grass because of the amount of water required. Golf courses in New Mexico are amazing because the entire golf course is one massive multi-acre sand trap with strips of green in it. And those are beautiful, lush green, but they are within an inch of their required, because they have restrictions and limitations on how much grass they can have due to the amount of water that it requires to keep them alive. Our livestock needs it. Our communities need it. So to manage that water more effectively, we have a much greater handle on it. We have, we're much more aware of water as a precious resource. Unfortunately, because New Mexico is in the United States and a bunch of people from around and other places came to New Mexico, popping Zoloft and ED meds and whatever else magic pills they're popping, and I bet that water table is contaminated. So it's now a systemic problem that was a profit maker. And you run into the problem of, so many different companies creating so many different meds that none of them can really be held to account. They can't really be stopped because we have 300 million plus people addicted to one med or another. Whether it's tiny penis medicine or heart medicine or brain meds or psychotropics or fentanyl, the escape drugs, all that, it goes back into the water table. And it contaminates the supply for the next generation, and the concentrations continue to creep up year by year. So I can appreciate going after Kimmers for their destructive practices. But I fear that they are such a small portion of what's going on. If we're going to address this issue, let's address the whole issue. Let's see if we can't be a little less tiptoe and a little more bite. Let's find and hold this stuff accountable. Hire some scientists to take a good look at this water and say, all right, we've identified this. Who's responsible? Whose component is this? And once you identify it, you hold them to account to get it out of the water supply. Just like we held Exxon to account to clean up the oil that they dropped in the Gulf. And I think that accountability, which is, the cornerstone of one of the political ideologies, isn't being exercised. It's not being utilized. It's not being emphasized. And whoever is responsible for the company, they are responsible for the company. If the company has been found guilty of committing a crime, poisoning the water supply, which I would consider a crime, then these people should be held to account, serving time and paying the money necessary and developing the technology necessary to correct it, so that our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, future trees, vegetables, and livestock aren't continually and progressively contaminated by the profits made by Big Pharma over the past 30, 40 years. And I think much like what happened with Listerine, if anybody remembers that court case, They should be required, all of them, over the next 50 years, to point out that you don't need a magic pill. Eat a carrot, go for a walk. If anybody remembers a diet aid called Fen-Phen, if you want to know where fentanyl came from, that was one of the most popular diet meds there for a while until we realized, oh my God, this can kill people. Ephedrine and fentanyl, that's a great combination. Or ephedrine, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And we're doing it to ourselves, and we have created a system on the private sector that we can dissolve accountability, and nobody has to pay for what they've done. Because we're all paying for this. Every one of us that drinks coffee or drinks water in a bottle, swims in a pool, because your skin is the largest organ of your body, yes? If you didn't know that, you're welcome. But you're going to cover your body in contaminated water. Your largest organ of your body is now coated in contaminated water. You have somebody else's erectile dysfunction medicine that cannot be filtered out. You have somebody else's Zoloft in your tea. You have somebody else's Xanax in your coffee. And there's no way to avoid it. And if you're getting your coffee from a big store like, I don't know, Buckstar, they're using tap water, ladies and gentlemen. They're pulling it right out of the garbage heap and pumping it into the machine to make your coffee. And I know this, so I'm making my coffee with tap as well. I'm right there with you. And that's why I'm thinking we should be doing something about this. But we don't. Because there's too much profit in it. There's too much lobbying power. There's too much money. Way too much money to combat. And we need something, which is what the EPA was supposed to be. But unfortunately, EPA can be affected by lobbyists. They can be affected by money. And they can also be affected by caseload, that if there's already enough for them to do over here, just like distracting the populace, then they can't concentrate and realize that, hey, we're building up a really contaminated, poisonous water supply. But oh well. Right now we have a pandemic to deal with. So, for me, I need to go make some more coffee. So please, don't go anywhere while we take a news and weather break from our friends at WWAY and a few words from our supporters, sponsors, and advertisers. Right here on the Asylum on the Big Talker Online.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating the lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear River Watch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Judicial elections are more important than ever. We need judges who uphold the Constitution and respect our God-given rights. This is Judge Michael Statting, your conservative candidate for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I am currently an elected Republican judge and serve the nation as a reservist in the United States Air Force. I am a battle-tested conservative judge with a clear ability to win. That's why I'm asking for your vote in the upcoming election. Remember to vote for Judge Michael Statting, your conservative candidate for the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Paid for by the committee to elect Michael Statting. Michael Statting is a reservist to the United States Air Force. Use of job title is not by endorsement by the Department of Air Force or the Department of Defense.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I wanted to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
If you want to talk about culture and politics without all the caterwauling, then you'll love Hertel Radio with me, your host, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m. right here on the Big Talker. Catch it on the Listen Live tab on the app or watch on the Facebook page.
Oh, yeah. All right, so another interesting topic that people have been asking me about. Hey, you're in media. I've been in media pretty much my entire adult life. I am a career production goob. And content is content. People will buy content. It doesn't matter if it's music, if it's podcast, if it's art, if it's a sculpture, if it's dance or theater. To quote Churchill, well, paraphrase, when asked about, hey, we need more money for the military, should we cut it from the arts? He's like, no, why what would we be fighting for? The expression of our humanity is as important as our humanity itself. So content is going to run the same gamut, if you will, as our arts do. You can have King and I. You can have Ada, famous opera set in India. You can have Figaro. You can have Gwar. You can have Puddle of Mud. Alice Cooper. Dee Snider. The range and extreme Kiss. The range and extreme of this clown show is all meant to get people to engage in content. This has been going on since records were being sold, since TV shows had advertisements. That's the whole point. The thing is, the human condition has been more and more difficult to satiate. And therefore, the extremes of content on any given axis continues to widen like the universe. And I would say even faster than the universe. And now we come upon this interesting explosion of people giving a darn about this Spotify crap and Joe Rogan. Now, I've seen a couple of Joe shows. It's just I'm not a big Joe fan. He's had a couple of great guests, and that's why people tune in. That part of the content is usually pretty good. When he has people on there like Elon Musk that, they're smart. And they actually have, interesting conversations. Maybe it's the whiskey. I don't know. I don't drink whiskey. But the part that everybody seems to miss is how insulting it is to hand this guy $100 million when everybody else has to get their tunes. People have been working at this for years, developing a catalog of material, and they have to play a song 1,000 times to make $1. And they're going to hand this guy $100 million. That's the insult. That's why people are pissed. It's like if you're willing to shell out, if you have the money to shell out to one guy $100 million, then you've got money to pay the artist a lot better than you do. That's the point. If you want to get through the noise, you want to get through the caterwauling and all the memes and stupidity and the jokes and people getting it all wrong. No. Think about it. Here's an artist who's, paying out of pocket to get the material recorded, including creating the art in the first place, creating the song, and then paying to have it captured in a way that can be shared on a streaming platform, who's going to pay them 1/1000th of a penny. Even though they're charging, they're raking in millions of dollars a month, enough to pay this guy $100 million. But they can't pay the artist? That's pretty insulting. So yeah, I think all the streaming platforms need to get a, eye-awakening experience and say, you know what, we're doing this upside down. In fact, with the cost of everything going up and up and up, you can imagine disposable income to pay for things like streaming platforms is going to get thinner and thinner, and people are going to just stop. They're going to realize that I can't afford to be donating to the YouTube influencer. And if instead of Spotify, I bet kids are going to start going back to record stores. I still have and continue to add to the well over 2,000 CDs that I have in my collection and storage, in addition to the couple of hundred LPs that I have. They're all ripped. They're all in my little play thing, iTunes. I take them with me on the phone so I can play them in the car. I ain't paying for that. I'll pay the artist. Artist comes to town, they're playing a show, the CD's $20, here's $20. That's a hell of a lot more than you're going to get from Spotify. That's for damn sure. So, big artists pulling their stuff from a streaming platform isn't going to really affect their bottom line. And the starving artists who are doing it more for the exposure, because again, you have to play 1,000 times one song to make $1. And even then, in a lot of these platforms, it's just under $1, like 98 cents after 1,000 plays. But they're going to give this guy $100 million. That's just insulting. And I think that's where a lot of the misinformation and the yelling and the caterwauling misses the point. I've spent a lot of time in my career on my talents, on my skills, Has Rogan? Yeah, I don't know if Rogan has really, he has morphed from MMA into this podcasting arena. And it's part of that making stupid people famous because everybody saw him fight and they think, wow, he's a smart guy. People who fight aren't necessarily, the brightest bulbs in the package. That's not 100% true, but I think there's a good consensus going here that his guests are far more valuable than he is. So if you could plug an adult into that chair, you could have a much better show. I mean, the hot wings, spicy, whatever that show is, that one's really good. I like that one. Because as long as you're going to have a shtick, which is what it takes, and we've been doing this as artists forever, Dolly's mustache, Dee Snider's hair, Alice Cooper's face, right? Everybody's got to have a shtick. Robert Plant with his broken buttons or whatever the hell was wrong with all of his shirts. Iggy Pop can't find a shirt. Everybody needs a shtick. Everybody needs some sort of gimmick to set themselves apart. The problem is we now have so many shticks and gimmicks. That's now our criterion. No longer do we care as to quality or content of character, content of, character of content. So it would very much upset the artist to realize that they're worth 1/1000th of a dollar, but Joe Rogan's worth $100 million. I mean, I don't know what comparison I can draw to help illustrate that, but that's going to be an insult to people that have already been there. And it's what they're, it's the content that they're paying for. Here are some artists that have been, pouring their hearts out and expressing the human condition for decades. And then this guy comes along ranting what people just, screaming to the extreme. Not helping, not providing solutions, not offering anything other than, oh, but I need to get my stuff together, don't I, brah? I should. You know what? I need some help with this conversation, so we'll be right back once I get my smart guy on the line. So we're going to take a quick early break, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Keeping Charlotte informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach. Listen to Tom Goolsby on The Chad Adams Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Here's 1 minute of tree knowledge in 30 seconds with K.O. Davis.
It's important that you have somebody, a trained professional, to trim your trees. There are these guys out there that just hack trees, and that's the worst thing in the world that you can do. Don't let somebody hat rack your trees. That's tree term for hat rack. You know how they just cut a tree and it looks like it's just got like a hat rack? These guys just go up and just cut the trees off, and they don't cut it back to the proper spot. Call us, because we care about your trees.
Visit KO's coasttocoasttree.com.
Don't let some yahoo hat rack your trees.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating a lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear Riverwatch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. Twomenandatruck.com.
Folks, you know you're all looking for that special gift. Lines are long, traffic is frustrating, supply chains in the news. Just take a deep breath. If you're anywhere near Oak Island, come by Seaside Jewelers, 8801 East Oak Island Drive. Avoid the traffic, the lines, the frustration, and get that extraordinary and special gift. From high-end diamond rings to Larimar, from necklaces to bracelets, watches, and unique jewelry. And you also get one-on-one service with their experienced staff. Great prices now, just in time for the holidays. Come by and check out Seaside Jewelers, 8801 East Oak Island Drive.
Tune in to the WWAY News at 6 p.m.
Thank you for joining us tonight for your news at 6. I'm Hannah Patrick.
I'm Randy Aldridge. We want to get straight to our WWAY team coverage of last night.
For the biggest and most compelling stories that make a difference.
On the scene shortly after the blaze began and has the story now.
Cleveland is one of the fastest growing towns in the country.
First court appearance this morning in Pender County.
WWAY News at 6 p.m. This is the place.
If you want to talk about culture and politics without all the caterwauling, then you'll love Hertel Radio with me, your host, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m. right here on the Big Talker. Catch it on the Listen Live tab on the app or watch on the Facebook page.
Welcome back to the Asylum on the Big Talker Online. Joining us live from Vietnam, Mr. Andrew Donaldson from ordinary-times.com.
I do like this walkout music because, like him, I do love it when they call me Big Papa.
And there's the break right there.
There you go. How's that for syndication quality radio?
So I'd like to get your opinion on a couple of things. One of
I
which
got an opinion for you.
Is this Chemours story, but I think the Chemours story is sort of like a surfactant compared to the contamination of the water supply by erectile dysfunction medicines and Zoloft and Xanax and the tons of other crap that the big pharma companies have been dumping into the American population for the past 40 years, 50 years. That's now in our water supply, and nobody's held accountable. What's your...
Yeah, and we want to be careful here because you can go down the conspiracy theory. Alex Jones, they're turning the frogs gay in the water kind of mess and curry. There's issues with the water. Chemours, of course, is the name, especially in the North Carolina region, that's getting used a lot. It's not just here. Out in Hawaii, the U.S. Navy is in the middle of a huge problem
where they've been contaminating the water out in Hawaii for years and years and years, and it's making military dependents and other people very, very sick. This is a story out in Hawaii. You can look it up. We know what happened in Flint, Michigan. We know what happens with lead pipes and things like this that we now have data on that they didn't have back in the 60s and 70s when they were putting that stuff in. Water quality is a very real thing. I actually grew up, my uncle was an environmental engineer. So when I was a little kid, he would do all these, he lived up in Pennsylvania, so they do all these reclamated, like old steel plants and smelters and things like this, and he would get hired. He would go out, and I'd tag along and carry the kit, and we'd do water testing samples and soil samples. That's what he'd be hired to do, and he'd do the environmental impact, and then he'd have to, design new drainage and stuff around what he'd found, this sort of thing. So I remember when I was a little kid walking around with my Uncle Rocky, doing water samples and soil samples on these old reclamated steel mills, and I'm not talking about the newer ones. These are ones from like the 1890s, 1900s.
The way Ironton got its name, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, these are the old, what they called the honeycomb, honeypot smelters. They're just these little, and this is stuff that's 130, 140 years old, and you can still test for it in the water and the soil, which is just it just looks like a barren field, but it used to be a big smelting plant. 123rd year later, there's no vegetation growing because the ground's so contaminated. We're out there taking soil samples.
Now,
so this is a real thing.
Would this fall under infrastructure?
Water quality, I would think so. It's probably more federal government-wise. This would fall under EPA more.
Now, do you think the EPA even has any power to do anything? Because
they have vast powers, but the problem you have here is what you've been talking about. You have overlap. Okay, so you have pharmaceutical companies, which is FDA, CDC, those sort of regulatory places. They're dumping water into the. They're dumping stuff into the water, which would fall under the EPA. And then you would have so you have this crossing of the streams where you have multiple organizations and multiple agencies that would oversight this, which means nobody's oversighting it, is kind of what ends up happening.
And we end up with a massive amount of profit on the part of the pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies, and absolutely no recourse, and future generations are forced to drink stuff that cannot be filtered out, because the pharmaceutical companies are not required to disclose their constructions, their molecules or whatever. And
well, here's
nature doesn't know how to get it out.
I'm all for going after the pharmaceutical companies, because what they've done, if you've been watching the trials up in West Virginia and elsewhere, the way they flooded the market with painkillers, and they artificially created the current opioid epidemic, which we were talking about the other day. So I'm all, you want to mount up and ride against, Big Pharma and the Purdue family and all these folks. The Sackler family. I'm with you. Let's get all of them that did anything untoward. The problem you get here is you're relying on government to fix a problem, and we already know how that story is going to end.
Because the government made money on this.
There's going to be malfeasance. There's going to be incompetence. We're working on the show tomorrow. Tomorrow's Heard Tell is going to be big on government accountability. A story out of the rabid right-wing New York Times on how the $800 billion PPP program it worked, but it was about 8 times as expensive as it needed to be, and it didn't help anybody it was actually supposed to help. It helped exactly who we said it was going to help. It helped the companies and the shareholders because they controlled the flow of the money because of the way it was designed, because there was no accountability.
And it was all money. No solution, all money.
It was just dump money into the system. Well, if you dump money in the system without guardrails, it's going to go to the same people the money always goes to, which isn't going to help anything. And another story of accountability on tomorrow's Heard Tell in the VA system about the Vietnam veterans, how we're cutting all this red tape for COVID people to get, an average citizen can get all these benefits, but they didn't cut any red tape for the veterans trying to get their benefits, and they're now 500,000 behind where they were in January of 2020 on trying to apply stuff. These old Vietnam vets, they get paper
each one
records,
of those is a person.
500,000 cases. So not only persons, but you start talking their dependents, you're talking 2-3 million people involved here, because their dependents are entitled to compensation and or benefits as well. So you're talking a huge amount of people here. To put this in perspective, they need paper records. The MPRC, which is where the archive for paper records, which the Vietnam vets was all paper records,
They completely closed the facility for 18 months. Nobody was working there but a skeleton crew. They hadn't processed crap. So now they're 500,000 claims behind, and they're not even going to catch up on processing the claims, not completing the claims, just starting the claims until the end of the fiscal year 2022, which is going to be October. They're not even going to start cleaning up the mess for another 9 months. That's how bad it is. We're going to talk about that. And I'm working on, I reached out to a mutual friend today who said, we think we can I want to get the writer of that article in Military Times. We're going to try to have her on the program. But yeah, tomorrow's show going to be big on government accountability. But the reason I'm always harping on it is because a lot of our problems come back to government accountability. Bad water, bad VA system, bad legislation, bad presidents, bad policy. All that starts with a little bit of accountability would have improved a whole lot of that mess.
And these are much better conversations than some of the memes and rhetoric I've seen go by. And certainly
Dude,
a lot of the shouting.
My guest tomorrow is Dale Cooper. For folks that don't know, in West Virginia, the main talk radio station is WCHS Radio. That's the radio station I grew up. Like I was kidding with him. Like every time I hear the call letters, I'm in the backseat of the car riding around with my dad listening to the radio with him, and he's explaining stuff to me. Right? This is pre-internet.
Right.
So that's how you learned about the world. My dad would listen to the news and the talk radio station, and he'd try to explain it to me. So he's the programming director for WCHS in West Virginia. He's a manager for West Virginia Radio Corporation. Plugged in guy. So instead of all this caterwauling about Joe Manchin in West Virginia, let's just ask Dale. So Coop comes on air Coop at Twitter. If you want to follow him, great follow. So on tomorrow's show, we recorded it yesterday. Coop comes on, and he just lays. I just asked him. I was like, "What's West Virginia think about all this national attention? Talk to me about Manchin." He's interviewed Manchin, dozens of times because that's his job, and Manchin has to do local media. So, but then we get into one of the things we talked to about Cooper, talking about government accountability. We've lost local media because all local media has gone national, which means they don't do any accountability locally, which means your reps and your senators. Why does Joe Manchin talk to local radio? He has to, because that's his constituency. So he talks to local media. They hold him way more accountable than the national media that's just trying to slam it into a narrative. So when he goes on with Hoppy Kercheval on Metro News in West Virginia, Hoppy will just cut him off, interrupt him, cut him down. No, Senator, that's not true. You get a way better interview out of him because he has to sit there and answer those questions. He can just blow off the national media. He can't do that with local media. But the reason I wanted Dale on, you can talk to Coop, and he explains how media actually works and why we're losing local media and why it's so important.
And even local media that has a wider reach, that we're no longer dependent on one transmission or another.
Yeah, Coop had such a great line. He talks about, you think, because West Virginia has always, I know I'm being a homer here because I'm from West Virginia, but I'm telling you, West Virginia has excellent media. The Charleston Gazette won a Pulitzer not 3 years ago for opioid coverage. Like Coop had a great line. He was at the radio station when I'm interviewing him, and we were talking about stereotypes of West Virginia. He's like, well, I'm looking at the wall over here, and let me see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's 21 Marconi sitting on the wall. That's the radio version of an Oscar for people that don't know what a Marconi award is. He's like, yeah, I'm looking at 21 Marconis against the wall over there, so I think we know what we're doing.
Marconi being the father of radio.
Yes. So the award for excellence in radio, like an Oscar or whatever, the MVP in a sports league.
Right.
For radio, it's the Marconi Award.
The
And
Hall
he's
of
sitting there
Fame.
like, I'm looking at our shelf over here. We got 21 of them right here going down the wall. Why aren't we talking to those people instead of listening to the same 6 pundits over and over and over again about what Joe Manchin says, when I can talk to Coop, who has a working relationship interviewing the guy, and he tells him the truth. He's like, I used to be able to have a read on Manchin. I don't think he'll say it on the show tomorrow. You need to tune in and listen. He says, I don't have a read on him anymore because it's changed, because he's under so much fire locally. Federally, when he comes home, his guard's up now. He talks to us differently. He acts differently because of what he's been through for the last year. He's like, I don't have a good read on him anymore, but he hasn't really changed. He's just hardened his position because he's under so much attack. It's insight you don't get. But I tell you what I loved about talking to Coop about, he explains why media works now. People don't realize Rush Limbaugh died last year. Whatever you thought of Rush Limbaugh, that changed everything. And it wasn't his on-air talent, which he obviously had.
He's the best to ever do it. Whether you agree with his politics or not, he's the best to ever do it. The numbers don't lie. His audience was bigger than the next 5 people put together. Like, it's not arguable who the best radio person of all time is. It's not even close. His business model, the way he monetized commentary, the way he monetized advertising, the business model. You understand everything that network news does now is the Rush Limbaugh business model. People don't understand that commentary to get advertising and you build those brands up, that has infiltrated not only talk radio, Fox News's entire network was built off Rush Limbaugh's monetization policy of commentary.
And
this is openly known. Like Murdoch just openly said, is like, yeah, we took the Rush Limbaugh, premier radio. You know more about this. I don't want to bore people with inside. The premier radio network syndicating out the radio station, getting money that way, the syndication deals, that changed everything. Like, you don't have Joe Rogan getting $100 million from Spotify if you don't have Rush Limbaugh's syndication package with Premier Radio, because he was the first to do it. This is like Jordan going to Nike. It was that much of a paradigm shift in media. But now it's changing again. That 3 hours a day model, and you have the one big voice, that's gone now because the media market is fractionalized. And you're not getting another Rush Limbaugh anyway. And again, you can hate his politics, but his business model, how he became insanely wealthy, riding around in a G5 type wealth, was his business model. And the way he monetized commentary and monetized news and monetized current events. That's how Fox News and MSNBC, that's the model they work off now, is what Rush Limbaugh pioneered. So I talked to Coop about that, and he lays it out for people. You need to understand not just what the media is doing, you need to understand why they do it.
They do it to sell stuff.
They do it to sell stuff. But inside that model, there's cracks in there for people now, because if you have one of these, if you're watching on the Facebook phone, I'm holding my phone up, and I talked to Coop about it tomorrow. If you have a phone, you're a part of the media now. If you have an Instagram account, if you have a Facebook account, Twitter account, you're part of the media now.
Click a picture, take a video.
You are the media. So start acting like it and get involved.
And that would be a nice call to action for people to vote, because the elections are coming up this year, and we have people like Pat McCrory, the senator, former governor, who was the governor at the time of the Vertex rail fiasco, is now running for Senate in North Carolina. Do you have an opinion on term limits? Like, I think across
I've
the
changed
board,
on this.
Really?
You know, I've changed on this. I used to think term limit. I don't think term limits are good, and I'm going to make people mad here. We should have a mandatory retirement age.
Ooh.
That would be way more effective. The military has it, so don't tell me the government can't do it. I know legally this is never going to happen. Just, I'm not stupid.
Right.
But there's a reason we make military leaders, except for the very, very highest ranks, retire at a certain age. They just can't go anymore. Instead of a term limit, which is an arbitrary standard, and just as a lover of freedom, the more I study law, the more I study legislation, the more anything that's arbitrary always ends up bad.
Well, I don't think term limit is arbitrary, because you're setting a limit.
But it is. Here's where it's arbitrary, and people will disagree with me on this. Here's where it's arbitrary. You're saying that every single public servant is of equal value, and that you only need 2 terms out of them.
Yep.
But that's not true, because you can have a bad one that's not equal value to a great one.
And that's why you get rid of them.
Now here's the problem is you have bad representation, because you have bad voters who keep voting for them. So if they want bad representation, you have to let people have the right to be wrong. Okay, fine. I think it would be way more helpful to have a mandatory retirement age for federal. It is ridiculous that 5 of the hold on, let me rephrase that. 2 of the top 5 people in line for the presidency in the order of I can't remember the term I'm talking about, the order of succession. Thank you. 2 of them, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Grassley, are well in their 80s. President Biden's 78.
Right. Yeah.
Three of
point.
the top 5 government officials are, like, no rational person would say that this is healthy. And no disrespect to any of those 3 people. By the way, that's 2 Democrats and a Republican. So I don't care what the parties are. Let me give you this example. My grandfather Donaldson was within like 3 or 4 days of the same birthday as Reagan. Loved Reagan. Worshipped the man. Refused to vote for him.
like he loved everything about Reagan, but he refused to vote for him. He said, why? He would tell you, he's like, men our age have no business being president. I'm not voting for him. Everything else being equal. It just kind of always stuck in my head that this is a man of great integrity. He said, I'm not going to vote for him. He was like, men our age, and they were within, I think, about a week of each other's birthdays, same age. He said, men our age have no business being president.
Because my point would be that if with term limitations, that we don't have career politicians, and it allows new ideas and new sophistication from the coming generation. Because think about it. How long has McConnell been in office? He's been in office long enough for a man to be born, grow up, get married, have a child, and that child be old enough to vote. That's 2 generations.
Yeah.
That's undue influence, and certainly behind the times as far as development of technology, sophistication, social issues, et cetera, et cetera. And once you become, to me, a career politician, you have disconnected yourself by design from the very constituency that you are meant to represent. So if we eliminated the possibility for a career in this, that you would be elected for that position for a maximum of 2 terms, no matter what the position, whatever that term is, 6 years, 4 years, that when you're done, there's going to be promotion from within. There's going to be development that happens during that 8-12 years that's almost its own generation. Because we do make massive changes every 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years, that it would almost correspond to a growing understanding of these offices. And there wouldn't be the ability to abuse the power 40 years later, as in, your favors in my pocket. It would eliminate a lot of that, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't fight people against it. I'm just saying I'd rather have the retirement age because I think it's a more attainable goal. But I don't disagree with everything you say. I think these people will find folks that want to be career politicians are going to find a way to be career politicians. I get making it harder on them.
Oh yeah,
but
because it's a free ride. And
this is
no marketable skill required to be a politician.
Well, yeah, there is. You have to be able to fundraise. That's the
you hire people to fundraise. You're not doing it.
Well, you have to either be able to hire them or you got to be able to do it. But this is going to be an unpopular thing to say. You need some people in government that have 20 or 30 years of experience. You just do. You just do. We don't. There's a reason I was a sergeant, not a general. All right. You need some people. I know this is going to be insanely unpopular. You need some people in government that have done it for a long time and know every in and out, nook and cranny to do it. You can't just have all
Roger
new people all
Sherman
the
did
time
his
with their-
entire thing inside of 14 years, 12, 14 years.
Yeah, and how many of those have we had?
1.
We need 435 members of Congress and we need 100 senators at any sitting time.
Right.
You going to tell me we have 600 people like that at any given time?
Well, if we would,
you see what I'm getting at, though.
Well,
like you got to teach to the lowest level here.
Well, we got to find a way to encourage them to have the George Washington ideology as far as, being a participant in their community. Because there's out of the 330 million people here, we got some smart.
You mean
people.
like Josh Hawley, who doesn't even own his own home in the state of Missouri, and his only address that we can find is in Northern Virginia, but he represents Missouri. You mean that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, Well,
we could eliminate.
To be fair, if we just, to be fair to your point here, if we just enforce the rules we got, you wouldn't have some of this nonsense. I'm all for.
Yeah,
it would be great. It would be great to go back to having a part-time Congress. The problem is nobody could afford it. They couldn't afford to stay. You already have Congress members now that have to sleep in their offices because they can't afford rent in D.C. because D.C. is so expensive.
Well, my question is, why are we?
It's
even
just not going to
paying
happen now. That's a good question. Again, this is one of those things I've waffled on. This is one of those things I've waffled on because the argument is we got to pay them to stop corruption. I'm like, well, if they're corrupt, they're just going to take. If they're corrupt, they're just going to take both and say thank you very much. That's not much of an argument.
Not really.
I think you pay them, but I think you get rid of the perks. I think that would actually cutting the pay ain't going to do anything. I think you get rid of the perks.
You mean like the health care that no other American will ever see or know?
You only get health care as long as you're in office. You can only write off anything
Amen.
as long as you're actually in. Here's one. You can only write off anything if you're actually in
D.C. and Congress is in session. If they're not in session, you don't get to write anything off other than your travel back and forth. Like just some common sense stuff would cut out a lot of that. But
How about
you know,
attendance?
you have the Harry Reids of the world who grew up dirt poor, never had a job outside of being a senator, and died a multimillionaire. You know, this stuff is not hard to figure out that there's corruption going on.
And I think that would also be curbed considerably by.
We had Addison Hosner on our program. The insider trading scandal that nobody wants to talk about. It involves at least 1/5 of Congress. 1/5. The top 5 are all Republicans. The 5th place, Dan Crenshaw, is tied with Nancy Pelosi for people who have highly questionable. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, with highly questionable funding. They're beating the market by 200-300%. Like that's not possible.
Right.
1/5 of Congress is doing this.
1/5.
Like
that's
that should outrage
20%.
people.
One out of 20 people.
At least, like that's the bottom number, so it's probably higher. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And it's profitable to be, a career politician, and I think, that's, again, the only real understanding I had of the entire political process came from a college professor, and his thing was money. Because if you look at how elections are covered, they usually compare who has the largest donation bucket as to who will win the election. So if we could eliminate financial...
Yeah, but that's changed. See, here's another thing where nationalization has changed that. Now we saw it, you just mentioned Mitch McConnell, Amy McGrath ran against him, and the national fundraising for these Senate and House seats is just out of control. So because everybody hates Mitch McConnell, they dump a ton of money on Amy McGrath, who never had a prayer of beating Mitch McConnell. She gets ungodly fundraising money and doesn't get within 20 points of him. See, this is something else where the national instead of the local has really changed things, because they're dumping so much obscene amount of monies into these congressional races and Senate races. And a lot of them, it's against national figures like a Mitch McConnell, who you have no prayer of beating. Beto O'Rourke, he got like $120 million fundraised. Like that's insane. And he never had a chance of winning that race, even though he got within a respectable, I think, 4 or 5 points of Cruz. And that's just because Cruz is such a
How much? How much?
He spent over 100. It was like $120 million he fundraised total.
So he could have bought Boom Aerospace hangar at Piedmont
for 10 minutes.
Man,
probably would have built a better airplane too. But that's neither here nor there.
I mean, $100 million. That's like that would cover the cost of the impact study required to replace the bridge, the Memorial Bridge. I mean,
yeah, which is going to be $600 to $800 million. And
overall.
it goes up every time you delay it. So,
but instead, we're encouraging people to throw money at political action committees, lobbyists, and candidates. When that same money, like, could we do a crowdfunding for the bridge?
No.
I mean, is that what it's going to take?
No, it'd be illegal.
I mean, does the government need to do it? Because if we can raise $100 million in less than a year?
Well, we're going to cover it tomorrow. $800 billion in PPP that basically went off into the ether without doing anybody any good.
800 what?
That's 800 billion.
Now, would have fixed the bridge?
You need 600 to 800 million for the bridge. We're talking 800 billion.
So we could have done 1,000 bridges.
Yeah, I don't know how to do math, so I have no idea how many, but you could do a bunch of them.
Yeah. That's an obscene amount of money just in one transaction.
By the way, pay attention to this Battleship Point development, since we're talking about questionable things going on. Keep an eye on this Battleship Point development. There's some interesting individuals getting involved in that bad boy.
Oh, the Stack Shack on the marsh next to the boat?
That, and then they keep trying to sell the little triangle island between the battleship and downtown. And they want to develop, I think it's like an 8.5 acre site, and then there's a 4.5 acre site off the marshland on the backside, which of course you could come off the highway right there, which, prime real estate, you're looking right at downtown. I get it. Keep an eye on those sorts of things, because there's going to be some shenanigans involved.
I wonder if there will be any donated land involved.
It used to be a joke that you were going to sell somebody a patch of swampland. They're going to literally do it.
They're going to do it. You drive some piles in that bad boy, let the crabs crawl up the side, you're set.
Well, the problem they had, the reason that island hadn't been developed is because it's got a bunch of waste on it because it was I guess originally years and years ago they had a shipping facility of some type there, so it's all kinds of industrially screwed up. Nobody wants to pay for the cleanup.
Nothing nests there. Nothing grows there.
Oh no, I mean it's not like a super fun site or anything, but you're talking a couple $1 million in a few years before you can even like start building anything on. A lot of people don't want to fool with that.
And that's where we are.
Plus, there's an access issue because you would have to access. I forget. I gotta go look this back up. I think you would have to access this from the north side of Wilmington and come back over instead of from, the other side, which is way more traffic and easier access. So there's stuff like that involved too. But they'll figure it out. Somebody will have enough money. They're gonna take a run at it.
Man, there's so many moving parts, and it just keeps us distracted from what's really going on. And I think that's what's amazing about a lot of your articles and your interviews is that you're getting to the people that understand the problem rather than yelling about the problem.
Yeah, we do it today. Today's show, which we're very proud of. You remember Facebook changed their name to Meta?
Meta.
Eric Cunningham, our
Metaverse.
buddy, our buddies from Election Daily, we keep using.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote about the metaverse, and he wrote about it in Ordinary Times, ordinary-times.com. You can go read about it. We have him. He's the guest on the show today. It's up right now. If you missed it, it'll be back on at 3 p.m. right here on the Big Talker, or you can get it on the iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform you want, or you can watch it in full color, 1080 HD or whatever that number is on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. I'm ADHD is what it is. But he's like, look, this isn't going to work. They're taking the model where you have the massive multiplayer online games.
Right.
And they want to turn it into doing real life business inside of a massive multiplayer online game. It's never going to work. It's not going to work. They're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on this thing.
So it's going to be like Sims playing Sims.
Well, we already did this. It was called Half-Life. They've had it for 10 or 12 years now. Or Second Life, excuse me. Not Half-Life. Half-Life was a video game.
I don't remember Second Life. Though.
Second Life. It's still there.
It's supposed to be like a digital avatar equivalent.
Yeah, you'll have an avatar and you'll go into digital Walmart and buy all your stuff and it'll show up at your house. This kind of stupid crap. And I'm like, well, I already hate Walmart. Why do I want to put another layer of Walmart into my life? That's idiotic. Plus, the part they don't want to talk about is, and when they bought out Oculus, remember the Google Glass? I can't even watch a 3D movie. Like, that stuff makes me sick, makes my head hurt. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing any of this virtual reality crap. And a lot of people have that problem. They just physically can't do it. But the amount of money involved here, and Eric dives into it, is just ungodly. They are just absolutely
they're planting the tree that the grandkids are going to sit under in shade.
But I don't think so, because the kids aren't doing that. The kids are actually... We've got the data. They're into TikTok. They're into short form. They
right
want
now in 8 years.
No, but what's the habit they're developing? They want short media to interact in the real world, and the business model of this thing is long form media in the artificial world replacing the real world. And all the data on anybody under the age of 30 right now is going the other way. They want short media. They want audio media. They want multitask media, multi-platform media. They want TikTok. They want Instagram. They want Snapchat, because they can do it, get out, and share it with their real-world friends and go back and forth. They don't want to totally immerse. We've got this data from 2 years of them doing online school. They don't want to totally immerse. They want their friends. They want to do it with them in the real world and go back and forth. I think the whole model's jacked, and we've got the data to prove it. But Facebook's got to be too clever by half, and the nerds who've never been in the real world don't understand that people think this stuff's cringy, and it's not going to have a big market. But anyway, it's all on Heard Tell this morning. Great show. We cover a lot of other things as well. One of the things I think folks may be interested in on Heard Tell this morning. Hold on. Click the wrong thing. I want to make sure I pronounce this correctly, because I say it wrong every single time. Do you remember back during Afghanistan? The withdrawal. You and me were on the air live that Monday. Remember that?
Yes. Okay.
I was By the way, thank you. Spoon fed me through that day because I was not okay. I was faking it till I made it because I was a freaking train wreck that morning. For those of you that don't know, I did air mobility for the Air Force. I had people on the ground on the airfield in Kabul WhatsApping me on air live while we're watching the pictures of people falling off airplanes. This was not a good morning for me for a lot of reasons. Okay. But I had to remember. I actually held up my laptop a time or two and was showing you the stuff people were sending me. Remember all this? Like this was a rough day. But remember, in the middle of all that, this British guy, this former Royal Marine, Penn Farthing. Remember him and his plane load of dogs he was trying to get out?
Yes.
Oh, dogs. We all love dogs. We covered it this morning on Hertel. They now have, remember, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's in all kinds of trouble. In fact, we were listening to Prime Minister questions, taking my kid to school this morning. He's under fire, so it made for a lit PMQ this morning. They now have the emails from the Prime Minister where they basically said, yeah, we need to clear them for priority because it'll be a good media hit for us.
Oi.
There was not one single person on that plane other than Penn Farthing. They loaded it up with animals, and it was one of the last planes out. I don't care how much you love animals. I love animals. I got 4 dogs and a cat. I love animals. I do this show. I do this show with a dog. I held little Shiloh 2 days ago on the program. I actually held her up at the end. We were talking about dogs because she likes to sit in my lap while I'm doing the show. Because she's only, she's like 4 pounds. She's tiny.
Like a loaf of bread.
Yeah, not even. She's tiny. She's a runt even by little dog standards, which is why we took her because we didn't think anybody would want her. I'm just telling you, there is not one dog worth one life. But it goes to show the disregard for the Afghanistan people, the utter incompetence of government, how it was all show, no plan. Let's get ours and get out. And we left the people there high and dry. We talk about that story on today's Heard Tell. We also talk about the lead item we talk about is all this backbiting in the media inside the Biden administration right now. Folks, one of our guiding principles, there's no such thing as a leak. If Ron Klain, the chief of staff, is getting press from anonymous sources, it's not by reporters don't walk down the street and White House information falls on top of their head. Okay, this stuff gets out.
They don't do the little cloak and dagger sliding an envelope under the door and walking away.
No, people, there's no such thing as a leak. If it got out, somebody wanted it out. Ask yourself who wanted it out and why, and you'll get through this noise a lot faster. So we had all weekend long, Jamie Harrison, who's the DNC chair right now. Remember, he ran against Lindsey Graham in South Carolina back in 20. He's the head of DNC. Reports about he's not doing a good job. What this is the Biden administration is blaming anyone and everyone that moves that's not named Joe Biden for the problems of the Joe Biden administration. So we cut through the noise on that. And then just the coolest little story to end the show tonight or this morning. This kid made his own Christmas graphic novel in a notebook, hand-drawn, right? He wanted it in the library, so he snuck it in the library and put it on the shelf and just left it. Well, his mom found out because she wanted to know where his notebook went. They go back, they couldn't find it. They panicked. Come to find out, the manager of the library found it, and they have the authority as librarians to add local books to the library, so they actually put a barcode on it, loaned it out. There's now a 54-person waiting list to get their hands on this book.
Get down.
Just the coolest little story, and they're going to make it an ebook because they don't actually want to keep loaning it out because it's all hand drawn and can't replace it.
And they don't want to typeset it?
Well, so they're going to do it as an ebook first, and once they do, the way publishing works now, it's actually easier to do an ebook first, and then they can publish a book off the ebook. It's easier that way because it's digitized. But just a cool story. We always try to end on something uplifting. So great stuff on Hertel today. Hope people check it out. Numbers are good. Growth is good. Eric Cunningham today. We did a 2 for Tuesday yesterday. Had 2 guests, not just one. People seem to like that. And we're setting up to do our long form deep dives, probably air those on the weekends. Strength over strength, man.
I like that new feature where the interviews are extracted and published separately.
Yeah, somebody asked about it, and they're like, well, we want, and one of it was for, most of those folks that come on, they do their own media, and they want it for their own promotion. So we started doing that, but people love it. We call it the Good Talks playlist on YouTube, but it's also on all the podcasts now. So if it says Good Talks, that's just the interview portion.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, one thing I talked to Coop about off air because I was picking his brain because he's a radio expert and I'm trying to get better at it. especially with our current situation with the radio station. I was just getting some advice on it, and he said that was so smart that you do that we do 2 segment interviews right off the top. And I told him the truth. It comes from doing live radio because, like, the old station, we had a Salem clock, which is a 38-minute clock. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, you have a radio clock. Like right now, Hertel's a 48-minute total runtime clock. It's an hour show, but it's only 48 minutes of content because you got to put the commercials in, right? Salem had a 38-minute clock, which is even tighter. And what would happen is if you have that second quarter hour guest on, you only got like 6.5 minutes. And you've got 40 seconds of intro and 20 seconds of outro, and then you got a minute of introducing the guest. Now I've got a national guest for 5 minutes. That doesn't do anybody any good. So we just tell everybody up front, it's going to be 2 segments. You're going to have 16 to 22 minutes, depending on how long the interview goes. You get a better quality. We can actually dive into the issues. The guest knows up front, because here's what you do. I'm telling you, because I do media hits. I'm doing Fox News on Friday night. You go in, you have your 4 or 5 talking points because you've only got 5. I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to get to speak 4 times, maybe 5 times total. And I've got to be in and out in 20 to 40 seconds each time I speak. You see what I'm saying? So I have my line ahead of time because I've got to get in and get out because I've only got 5 minutes on air.
So when they pitch to you, you've already been oiled.
I already know when I go on Fox Friday night at 11:30, Fox 5 in D.C., I already know I've got 5 minutes. I need 4 to 5 talking points on this subject. And it's on a piece I wrote. It's on the trucking piece I wrote. So I know the material, but I have to have it in sound bites. That's fine for what it is. But on Hertel, what we wanted to do, when I tell a guest up front, because we tell them ahead of time, we're going to talk for 16 to 20 minutes, they automatically in their mind drop the talking points.
Right.
Because they know I can talk now. I don't have to spit it out. And the quality of conversations that we do on Hertz, I'm telling you, we're a bunch of amateurs. The interviews we do, I'll put up against anybody, but that's why, because we tell our guests up front, go watch our guests with us and go watch them on other media where they only have 6 or 7 minutes. It's nothing against them or against the other media because they do what they're going to do. You just get a better content. You get the information. They can expand on it. They can joke around a little bit. You can hear their passion. And if they say something, you can actually stop and go back and dig into it. And it's just a more authentic, more real conversation, especially people we don't agree with. You get to actually hear them out. We get past the buzzwords. It's something we're very, very proud of. So I'm glad you brought up those pull-outs because those little 20-minute conversations, there's whole radio shows that are a half-hour radio shows, 22 minutes, and we're doing 22-minute conversations just with our guests. And I'm really, really proud of it.
Yep. And I think that's what allows us to have conversations as opposed to sound bites.
And I know that's a lot of inside baseball, but we want to be transparent with our show of like, this is why I had Coop on, because I want to talk about how media works, because you're a consumer. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing how the car works.
And looking at other cars.
When you go to the doctor, you don't let him do surgery until he explains every step of the procedure. And by federal law, and you sign the form, they have to tell you everything they're going to do. They got to tell you the anesthesia they're going to give. Why in the world do we ingest media into our brains and our hearts and our minds without questioning what it is? That's like having surgery without the doctor telling you what he's going to do. So we're going to talk about not just the media stories. We're going to talk about how media works. You have a right to know how this works. You have a right to know the business model of your media because the business model dictates the content they put out. So we're going to be transparent. We're going to talk about it.
And if your platform has $100 million to throw away on one artist but can't pay another artist 1/1000th of a penny for their work.
But you know the answer to this, and I know you don't like it, but it's the truth. He's worth the $100 million they put on there, or they wouldn't have paid it. He's bringing that much in. Howard Stern, remember Howard Stern's original deal was like $20 million for Sirius, and people freaked the flip out. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. I had the same problem then.
That's piddly now. Like his new deal is like 140, I think. Like something god awful. Like people are worth what they're paid. Like they're not paying him $100 million. They locked down.
I have a real issue with that statement, man.
But do you know how much pre-publicity Spotify's gotten in the last year off Joe Rogan?
Oh yeah. Oh man, the memes are ridiculous.
Like they've gotten $100 million worth of advertising just in the last month.
Because if you didn't know the name then, you do now.
Every media outlet has done nothing but talk about Spotify for 2 weeks.
Well, things like the Boom Aerospace slip right under the radar.
I know, but this is why we talk about media, because it matters.
Oh yeah, and how it works and why it's timed the way it is.
He's a bargain at $100 million because the publicity Spotify has gotten in just the last 2 or 3 weeks, that's $100 million worth of advertising easily.
And to quote my political science instructor, we really vote with our money. So
correct.
We are supporting Spotify by supporting the ability for them to afford $100 million for a single content.
And like I said on Hertel tomorrow morning show, when we're talking about government accountability, we vote with our money. We don't care about government accountability until we hold our government fiscally accountable. You're lying to yourself.
And
you're lying to yourself. If you can't hold the government accountable with our own money, you're letting the government bribe you with your own money. If you don't have enough integrity to be bothered by that, I don't really care what your politics are, frankly, because you've already told me you don't really care. It's all show. It's all pose. If you don't care that the government is using your own money to bribe you with crap like the PPP program to shut you up and keep you in line, I don't care what your politics are. They're meaningless because your actions told me you don't really care.
And that's where we need to make some sort of change. Could that be a volunteer program? Some sort of...
It's just a matter of give a damn.
Yeah.
We don't.
Well, we got to get it to a critical mass. How do we do that?
Usually something really bad has to happen. And
like
what
a
it's
bridge
going to
falling
be
in the water?
We're going to wish it was when the financial crisis of the debt of the United States government crashes down, you're going to wish it was a bridge collapsing. It's going to be ugly like you've never seen. And even it's a testament to how strong our country and our economy is that we can get away with carrying $25 trillion in national debt.
So do you see us walking around with wheelbarrows full
No,
of
it
cash
won't.
just to buy bread?
No, it won't be like that because what it'll be is the government will have to bail everybody out again, but the inflation will go through the roof, and remember, inflation is a tax on the poor, first and foremost, because cost of living we're going to have a cost of living we keep calling it economics. Let's get real about this, and I got to get off here. Let's keep it real. We're going to have a cost of living crisis, and you think $3 gas and inflation of 10 to 15%, which is about what it's been right now. It's been about 7% a quarter for the last 3 quarters. You think cost of living is an issue now? Wait till you have $5 or $6 gas, and it caught. I got 5 meals at Subway last night because we have my goddaughter from another family came over, spent the night. I got 5 subs from Subway. It was almost $60 to get 5 subs as meals at Subway.
And that's
$60.
And that's where it's going.
For 5 subs.
It's not going to go back, that's for sure.
Imagine $10 value meals at McDonald's. I mean, we're already there at Wendy's. Almost all the large
the
meals
$8 are better.
$10. Like you start talking about $5-6 gas. You start talking about people needing $30-40 for a meal, 1 meal a day, not feeding your family, 1 meal a day. We're going to have a cost of living crisis that's going to get real in a hurry for a lot of people. And the elite level isn't going to feel it as much, and you're going to have a disconnect, and that's when you get some really ugly stuff happen.
And on that note...
And on that happy note... But Hertel, folks, please check it out. We're really proud of it. I'm going to be working with TK when we start doing the long forms. Maybe we can get those out on the weekends on the Big Talker. We'll cut those up. The deep dives we're going to do, we're lining them up now. First one's Dr. Katie Gordon going to do mental health, working on getting some folks. The big NFL story yesterday, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins is suing the NFL. We're going to talk about that on a deep dive. We're going to talk about the VA, going to talk about government accountability, going to talk about overseas, going to expand your world. We're really, really proud of it. Please check it out. Please support it. Please share it. And we thank you so very much for it. And TK, thank you, my friend, because we've come a long way from that first day where I showed up late to do 3 hours of radio. But it's
well, you didn't have a door code.
Going pretty good. And no water.
And, yeah, that was and cold as ooh.
Yeah, there was no heat that day either. I forgot about that. Luckily, it wasn't that bad. But I do like that I can go to the bathroom on the own floor in my own home at least.
Yes.
So that's cool.
And I can do it like with pants or not if I choose.
And we're going to have a new background too, because I'm hopefully going to finally get a second computer monitor that I've badly bet. If you've never done editing, you don't understand how bad you need 2 monitors to really edit properly. I've been doing it with one and a laptop. I've had to sort files between my laptop and so hopefully I'll get my new monitor this week, which means we're going to reorient this camera, have a new background, try to make it a little nicer for y'all. So,
all right.
And my kid got into it. My second oldest got into college, and she's already told me I got to put some of her college swag up in the background, so I have to work that out. But it's okay. That's all right. She's same alma mater that both of my parents went to for their undergrads, and she got into the same school. So a lot of pride there. No problem with that. I was like, yeah, you send me a hat or a plaque or something. We'll get it in the background there. So.
All right. You would start seeing you in a robe. That was.
There was a run of sweater episodes because the heat in my house literally died. We had to replace the HVAC unit. So there's a couple where I've got my super bulky LL Bean Christmas sweater my mom gets me every year. I'm talking about the one where the collar is almost up to my ears kind of deal, because I literally had no heat in my house. And I have an electric fireplace behind me, but you can't run it while I'm doing audio because it's too loud. So when I'm recording, it's cold. So those sweater episodes from the second week of January, that's why I'm wearing sweaters, because there's no heat in the house.
So. Oh yeah, I do most of the shows in the garage in a coat because it's 36 degrees. So as we build more support, we will move into a building that has heat 24/7. So
we did. I got the generator outside. I was trying to figure out I actually did a decibel reading on running the generator on the back porch if I could still record inside, because the dang thing's so loud. But we'll figure it out.
Well, man, at least it's quieter than a boom supersonic. I'm sorry that I just had to.
Thanks, TK. Talk to you later, buddy.
See you soon. We'll be right back on the Asylum.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court, claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating a lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear Riverwatch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds, and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. Tune in Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. for Objection to the Form, covering civil litigation, real estate issues, and intellectual property. That's Objection to the Form, Thursdays 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Welcome back to the Asylum on the Big Talker Online. Good conversations with Andrew as always. And I like his take on government fiscal responsibility. I mean, for any decent gig, the company's going to do a financial check on you. Because this is, the kind of decisions that you make. And if our elected leaders are making 200% more gains than the market while in office, then we need to find a way to curb this. Guardrails, I think, is a good point. But another conversation we had, he mentions that we do financial checks on all other kind of things, right? When you're going into a business, buying a business, starting a franchise, you're always looking at the fiscal responsibility of the people involved, but we don't do that with our government, who has all our money and throws away on projects that they think, I feel remiss that there was such a development in supersonic transport technology and I missed it. Because apparently this has been going on a lot longer than I realized. Mainly because the big companies like Boeing and Airbus would say something if they were developing an SST. So it's not until after the deal is sealed do we get to hear the announcement and not get a chance to really question it. And if there was, we need to look into how that's done and see if we as a station can do a better job of bringing those conversations to the table before it's too late. Because all we can do now is just sort of follow along and report the train wreck as it happens. Kind of like Vertex Rail. They were supposed to bring 1,300 jobs to the economy, not a $45 million bankruptcy suit on a company that was majority owned. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2/3 ownership by China. So fiscal responsibility would go a long way to being more effective, because then we can look at programs that actually work for the problems that we have. We can find solutions that are not what we currently have because they're not working. An interview on All Things Brunswick, which I think runs later today as well. One of the guests was mentioning that he didn't want to change so much as he wanted to address some issues. And that's definitely a more realistic approach and start to that. Because as you address the issues, you find solutions for them. And through that, you end up changing the system effectively. Because you're changing the parts about the system that doesn't work so that it can work. And while it is that we cannot legislate people into morality, we can certainly hold them accountable for the consequences of their actions. If anybody was, besides the poor bastard holding a $45 million bankruptcy suit, was anybody else damaged in this Vertex rail disaster, fiasco, issue? And what are we going to do in the upcoming train wrecks? Are we going to hold anybody accountable? Do we have a plan? Do we have any, all those ideas at once. Is it possible when building these relationships, like with Vertex, like with Boom Supersonic, that we write in a recourse that if you fail at bringing us 1,500 jobs in the next 10 years, then you owe the state of North Carolina, 15 buckets of money. Is that unreasonable? I mean, we do that with other investments, that if you don't hold up your end of the bargain, this is the consequence. Do we not have that in our deals with companies that we romance into the area? Or do we just give them everything and say, hey, good luck? And we're going to spend so much time and money recruiting other companies to come here. Why not develop the companies that are already here? The ones that are struggling and need help, not the ones that are already government funded or whatever the case may be. I don't know the relationship for a lot of these larger industries, because I am not a smart man. This is, these are really big ideas. And there's a lot of money involved, and that's sort of my curiosity is $600 billion. I mean, that's, you could fix 1,000 bridges. I mean, that's some of that is obscene. And with fiscal responsibility in our government, we would certainly have a lot more to do, lot better roads, much better bridge maintenance. But if y'all are familiar with the Topsail Bridge here that they replaced recently, when they took the old one down, you could see why they needed to take the old one down. And I think we're going to find that if we get around to working on the Memorial Bridge. So with fiscal responsibility, I'm sure that we could take the enormous amount of wealth and taxes and such that we have managed to garner and maintain and not spend any money on because there was not an approved budget for a number of years, and be more effective at addressing the issues that are in our community now. One of the quotes in the Boom Supersonic news release, in the, not in that one, it was in the Community Violence Action Plan, where the spokeswoman was speaking directly to direct investment, investing directly in the community, which is, when you invest, investments are a risk. It's a gamble. It's a bet. It's a wager. Whatever synonym you want to use, it's one of the sins. And if you're going to gamble, you don't gamble your rent. You don't gamble your house payment or your car payment. That's just fiscally irresponsible. And if I'm not mistaken, that's sort of the heart of the conversation that Andrew is going to address and has addressed. And again, we don't do credit checks on our politicians. I mean, we should. And I get the government isn't a business built to make money, but it sure seems to. And I question that. I mean, we talk about budgets, and we have to budget our own household, and with inflation, we're going to have to budget even tighter. So you can imagine that disposable income is going to become less of a thing, and YouTube influencers are going to have to learn how to change a tire or something, develop some sort of marketable skill beyond makeup tech tips. I mean, there's a whole YouTube community that somehow makes money. And that's going to go away because there's not going to be the money to spend on that anymore. You're going to have to spend that just on food, gas, milk, bread. I don't know how milk and bread aren't food, but you get the idea. And that's why there are people like Joe Hunting to help us with that. He has a course called Financial Wisdom for Today, which we will need more than ever. And the concept behind the class is to teach you ways to use the money you're making now so that you can live the same lifestyle you have now or better in the future. Because again, if we're looking at 7 to 15% inflation over the next few years, then you're going to need your money to grow more than that 7 to 15%. And when you sign up for his class being taught at brunswickcc.edu, you get $100,000. And you invest that $100,000 and see how your strategies, ideas, and techniques work out. So you get to learn by doing. He has classes coming up in March and April. If you go to the website at brunswickcc.edu, he has morning and evening classes, so if you have a day job or a evening gig, you can still benefit from the education they did not give you in school, will not give you in school. So you can learn how to play the game like the big boys. And Joe has been examined, I guess, or certified by the SEC so that he can give this information. It's there's rules to what he does, and he can't be the guy that he is if he does something stupid and illegal. So he's dotted all his I's, crossed his T's, and he is completely sanctioned by the SEC to teach you how to live the same life you have now or better going into the future. Because think about it, 7 to 15% inflation over the next few years, that by the time some of us in the audience are ready to retire, the cost of living is going to be insanely high. And you need your money working now to get you there so that when you do retire, you're not eating ramens and orange peels. And in this, I appreciate that Joe has a very high interest in maintaining the big talker because he likes conversations to solutions as well. And that's what his course is about. And helping you prepare for a problem that you may not have signed up for, but we're all going to have to deal with it. And the more educated and more prepared you are, the more effective your strategies will be in the future. So those benefits are going to really pay off here before long. And I hope that as these financial issues become more pressing at the actual, end user buying gas and going to work, that's when we start looking more as, the uninterested third party non-voter group start saying, wait a minute, let's start looking into this. Because obviously this system is now out of control, running off the rails, and we need to get a handle on this. And it's because we've been voting the wrong people into office, and we need to start looking at people going into office with greater fiscal responsibility at a personal level, greater successes and proven experience in the private sector, and start looking at ways that we can limit the damage politicians can do in the open market. Because obviously their benefits are hurting somebody. We need to shake the bottle a little bit. Come up with some new ideas, come up with some changes, come up with some solutions so we can get to some effective, effective solutions. Look, I admit, I need more coffee. I tell you what, we'll be right back on the Big Talker. Morning Asylum coming at you after this 2 and 2.
Keeping Southport informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
If you want to talk about culture and politics without all the caterwauling, then you'll love Hertel Radio with me, your host, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m. right here on the Big Talker. Catch it on the Listen Live tab on the app or watch on the Facebook page. If you want to talk about culture and politics without all the caterwauling, then you'll love Hertel Radio with me, your host, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m. right here on the Big Talker. Catch it on the Listen Live tab on the app or watch on the Facebook page.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating the lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear River Watch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
This is Radio Free Dixie. Diversity is a buzzword today, but little is known about the truly diverse nature of the Confederate States of America. The Sons of Confederate Veterans want you to know about the religious diversity in the Old South. Many people think of Dixie as a society based on the Protestant religion. Yet, during the War for Southern Independence, the South's first two heroes, General Beauregard and Admiral Sims, were Roman Catholics, and the Confederate Secretary of State was Jewish. Within the Confederate Army, chaplains of various faiths worked with soldiers of various faiths. The Sons of Confederate Veterans invite you to learn the truth about your Southern heritage and join with us to make Dixie great again. Please visit us at makedixie.greatagain.org. That's makedixie.greatagain.org.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Nine o'clock? Oh, no. I'm going to be late. Late, as in the late Arthur Dent. Late, Dent, Arthur Dent. Obviously, the coffee has not been effective. I completely blew that line, and it's one of my favorites. Welcome back to the Fiscal Roadhouse Show. I'm kidding. But I will bring a lot of this back around to education at some point, so just, hang on to your handrails. But the most effective voter is an educated voter. And unfortunately, the current level of education of the voters is far lower than it should be for voters to be effective. As has been quoted before, the fantastic thing about our system is that anybody can vote. The horrible thing about our system is that anybody can vote. Here at the Big Talker, take two. Here at the Big Talker, we try to change that and have conversation about the issues and look for solutions, or look into problems that we're experiencing and try and suss out, head off, avoid, alleviate, misdirect, find some way to correct the boat. And even I love saying that. That's one of my favorites. I had to issue an apology on air about my slur of the CEO of Boom Supersonic. That was very rude of me, and part of the culture that we don't want to have. And somebody called me out on it, and 100% correct. We need to learn as a culture, as a society here in America, to have difficult conversations with respect. And it's hard to do because a lot of our shows have the intimidation factor, the bold guy, the alpha, just stomps over everybody, the screw your feelings. And we forget how rude that is, how disrespectful it is, and how difficult it is to have sensitive, hot topic conversations without getting insulting and personal. This is not taught anywhere along our educational continuum. So if we were taught during our social development, because again, we all have to play in the park, we all have to park in the lot. You know, throughout our lives, we are going to have to deal with other people, and we have to learn, like maybe read somewhere along the way in school, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and understand what we are and how far we're allowed to go. So we understand that voting is a right, but driving is a privilege. You know, we learn to separate these concepts so that as grown adults, we can look at our politicians and say, wait a minute, you're not exercising a right. You're flaunting a privilege. I can see the difference now, and we can, you know, through education. I mean, I love the Charlie Brown meme where no government is going to give you the education to overthrow them. So what we need to do is stop teaching children how to pass standardized tests and teach them how to be curious. I mean, some of the smartest people in the world are good at more than one thing. Brian May is an astrophysicist with published books. Very smart guy who happens to be the guitar player, or still is, he still plays guitar, for one of the biggest bands ever, Queen. And I don't think that there's a mistake in any of that, in the correlation between being really, really smart and able to understand things like astrophysics and music. Even Einstein, while not a world-class player, still played the violin. It helped him think. It helped him recognize patterns that were eluding him. That's what music does. That's what art does. And that's what's allowed human beings to survive, is our ability to recognize patterns and capitalize on them. And it started when we realized that winter comes in the cold season and summer comes in the hot season, and we need to sort of prepare for when it gets cold. So when it stops being cold, we plant our food, and when it starts getting cold, we harvest our food, and then through the winter, we huddle down and eat and not starve to death. I mean, it seems simple, but when you don't have the information going into it, you're just an ape falling out of a tree with some sense of metacognizance, opposable thumbs, and some sense of communication. Sibilance of communication. Semblance. So it's no surprise that everything about what we do is based on trends and patterns. It's the same reason why we react to the colors red, blue, and green differently. Red is fire, we run. It's a dominating, intimidating color. Blue is ice and cold, and, you know, we have different reactions. Green is the color of life, you know, plants and leaves and grass. And these have been ingrained in us over thousands and millions of years. I mean, it developed as, you know, amoebas in the pond. Your eyeballs can be traced all the way back to fish, the original fish. Back to the original, I think they called it like just the black dot or whatever, and its only function was to notice if it was daylight or, you know, darkness or brightness. They know when it's bright, they swim to it. When it's dark, they swim away from it. That's about all they know. But the swimming away from it prevents them from getting eaten, because usually that means there's a fish above them. And swimming to it means that they can get more energy from the sun and, you know, break into and become population. And also the sun is where their food is. So those same functions, those same components are present in our eyes as mammals on Earth, consuming the way we do and having our so important thoughts and constructs. But we don't get this kind of education. We don't get this type of connection between everything that's going on. Chemours in the water, we have other things in the water. Chemours is but one. Maybe it can be a benchmark, like with Kamala Harris. Let's let this be the first, but not the last. I mean, the amount of numbers that these pharmaceutical companies play with is absolutely obscene, and they get it. And once they're done with it, they flush it down the toilet, and it goes into our water supply. Which is why, if you look at, there's water samples across this nation that are going to show high level, they're going to show levels that they should not be showing at all of ED medications and heart medications, mood-altering psychotropics, what do they call it, mood elevators. And those are just the legal drugs. That whole gray area of opioids and MDMA and, there's a whole lot that we've done that if you think we're doing damage to the planet, just go get your own water sample from your own water source. Because infrastructure would include things like water, clean, drinking, safe drinking water available from my tap. I shouldn't have to buy bottled water, which is coming from the same source and it's going to have the same contaminants. And I'll be digging into that a little bit more over the next couple of days. Have a couple of actual, smart people who deal with this, and they'll be able to explain where these components show and see if he can't help unwrap the cycle of water, of what would be wastewater, when it goes through the earth and becomes water in the water table. What processing do we do? What processing can we do? And how effective we can be against this 40-year onslaught of synthetic stuff that most reasonable doctors would tell you are not needed. Again, that scene from Fight Club, where he's in the doctor's office and in his head he's asking for the red pills with the blue stripe that does this, and and the guy's like, look, just chew a ginger root and take a nap. It'd be the best thing you could do. So chemours can be a start. I can appreciate that. And then we set a bar for how we hold these people accountable. And it should be rather cumbersome to the company so that it's not something they can just walk away from and avoid. And I'd like to see the teeth restored to the EPA so that they can actually make and enforce these changes and laws. Hold them more accountable to what it is they're putting into their stuff so that we can get it out. And this fire near Wake Forest University is rather concerning. It's a fertilizer plant, and nitrogen is a vital component to the growing of crops. And again, it's not necessarily a dangerous product in and of itself. However, under certain conditions, confined space, high heat, it can result in devastating exothermic reaction, as we discovered in the federal building, I believe it was, where that type of device was used on a large scale. And these guys are at the shipping level, so you can imagine, it's not quite going to be what happened in Dubai, but it would not be good. I hope they get that under control. So the Winston Weaver Company in Raleigh, or Wake Forest area, have been asked to evacuate, seek shelter elsewhere. No injuries reported yet. Let's hope it stays that way, and people are smart enough to, again, color red, fire, bad stuff, go away, go the other way. Let the people who actually know what the hell they're doing deal with it. That's what we have them for. And if only we could exercise that type of sensibility when voting. For example, a reality star going into politics because he has no other marketable skill and none are required for politics. Let's rethink that. Name recognition should be a big red flag when going into something like this. This is how we end up with Vertex Railcar. This is how we end up with Boom Supersonic. Some of these are just not good ideas. And we need to learn how to have discussions about them before they're sealed in a magically proposed budget that includes an insane amount of money and some of the ways we can make that money back is by doubling the cost of parking. That's another fun topic. However, we can milk the locals who are struggling to make the ends meet. They're the ones who get hurt the most, because right now we don't have a whole flock of tourists, but we still have to pay to park at the beach. It's pretty rude. That's not community-driven government. Community-driven. Come on, that's what we need. That's I think going to be the key to our success as a civilization, as a species. Because we're obviously developing different over here. Because there's no other country on the planet that has the amount of mood alterators, mood lifters, elevators, and other opioids prescribed at this level anywhere else on the planet. So there's something wrong with the American way of life that so many people feel a need to escape one way or the other. And why we have such a mental health crisis, and we're supposed to be the most populated, or the most quality of life is supposed to be the highest here, one of the highest. But we're experiencing drug addiction, suicide, and mental health issues in staggering numbers compared to any other nation. And we're trying to do magic pill solutions for all of it without knowing what's in the magic pill. And that's always, going to come back to accountability. We can't hold the people to account for this, and that's what the judicial branch is supposed to be about. We need to give them teeth. Other countries caught on to that. They started holding people to account and actually sending them to prison for good stretches of time. But hey, we're hip to our pardons here in America. So commit your FBI, just flip your finger to the FBI and you get a pardon because you did it for me. And if you elect me again, I'll do it again. But at least he's honest and direct about it. He's not hiding from it. You know what he's done. You know what he's going to do. You already know his plan. He told you. You elect me, and I'll pardon you for whatever you do. Good job. So it'd probably be a good idea to start putting the guardrails on some of this. Start rethinking some of these powers. And I think that would be the red flag right there. A power? This is not about power. Should not be about power. This should be about building a stable, lasting community that benefits all. If it's about power, then that's already a bad sign. And it's something that we don't have to support as voters. We can look at the options that instead of power, we're looking at cooperation. We're looking at plans. We're looking at problems and solutions. We're looking at options and opportunities, not power. Power is one of the poisons for a society. I mean, Rome would certainly be a good example of that. There should be no central power in America. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. The power is everywhere. There's 330 million of us from coast to coast and beyond. 330 million ants can do a lot. And somehow we can't even feed ourselves. We can't even get a handle on truth and rhetoric. We can't seem to learn from previous encounters and research and background. A proven track record works both ways. If your proven track record is really good at things like aerospace technology, then building aerospace technology stuff is going to be a good fit. If you're really good at e-commerce and e-tail and Groupon, then that's what you should do. That's what you're good at. If you're really good at heart surgery, you should do that. If you're a really good plumber, you should do that. If you're a really good carpenter, you should do that. The idea being that being in your lane is your specialty, and the other stuff that you do is more of a hobby. And you shouldn't inflict the cost of your hobby on the taxpayers of North Carolina. And you don't come with inflated, bloated, just insulting numbers of 1,300 new jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in the economy. And you walk away completely disgraced with a $45 million bankruptcy lawsuit. And then turn around and do it again. And you notice that man is holding the bag all by himself. Pat McCrory was just more than happy to stand up there and cut the ribbon. But now that it's on the backside, nobody in that arrangement on our side, on the state government or whatever government entities were involved, I don't know if any of them were held accountable, but this guy's left holding the entire bag. And North Carolina lost, what, $600,000 in that deal? So now we got $100 million on the table. And this guy is speaking worse than the last guy with what's coming out of his mouth. And that's for anybody with a passing interest in aerospace supersonic transport. So we're about to do it again, and it's already sealed. We didn't find out about it until the news release afterwards, when the budget was magically finally approved. and without holding anybody fiscally responsible for what just happened, all we can do is watch the train wreck. And it's going to be a slow, painful train wreck from now to 2030, 8 years. Who knows who will be governor then? Who knows what's going to be going on then? But the one comforting thought is that the Piedmont Triad area, International Airport, will have a new hangar to do anything they pretty much want with. And there would be any number of airlines or aircraft maintenance that could be done there. Painting could be done there. Retrofitting, refitting, inspections, any number of things. So that facility will not go to waste. That's a good sign. That's a good thing. So that investment does make some sense. But as far as boom supersonic buildings, 15, 50, 70, depending on what number you look at, of these planes that fly anywhere from 55 to 88 people, depending on what numbers you look at, all of them are a zone. And the tickets being $100 a piece on United Airlines flying an SST anywhere in the world, 4 hours. I mean, it's just, it's an insulting. So I'm going to hold on to that bit, that at least we're going to get a really nice aircraft facility out of the deal, no matter what happens with that company. And for them, and if they do survive, it's going to be because they twist and change their model to fit something that has a market and an opportunity, a chance to survive, to make it, to succeed. But until then, I'm going to have a hard time letting go of this. We'll be right back on the Asylum on the Big Talker Online after this news and weather break as we go hunting down more of the bad guys. Isn't that right, Michael?
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. An uncontrolled fire at a fertilizer plant has forced thousands of people to evacuate in North Carolina. Firefighters warn that chemicals at the site near Wake Forest University could cause a large explosion. Authorities urge people within a mile of the Winston Weaver Company to take shelter elsewhere. No injuries have been reported since the fire started Monday night. Several environmental groups seeking justice in federal court claiming the EPA failed to hold Chemours accountable for PFAS pollution. 6 organizations say they are reactivating a lawsuit against the EPA for failing to grant a petition to require Chemours to conduct critical health studies on chemicals that are putting hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians at risk. The groups are the Center for Environmental Health, Cape Fear Riverwatch, Clean Cape Fear, Democracy Green, the North Carolina Black Alliance, and Toxic Free NC. The original petition was filed on October 14, 2020. The Wilmington Police Department has released last year's crime numbers. The number of murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, and arson went down last year. Rape and property crimes, however, increased. 15 people died in 13 homicides last year. 5 of them were gang-related. Students and staff at New Hanover County Public Schools will have to continue wearing a face covering in class. During the school board meeting last night, the board discussed whether or not to extend the current mask mandate. In a 5-2 vote, the board voted to keep the policy in place for students and staff. And Novant Health and New Hanover Regional Medical Center celebrating the 1-year anniversary of their partnership. NHRMC leaders say it would have been difficult to make it through the past year without help from Novant Health. Novant says it has committed more than $3 billion to fund facilities and other strategic needs. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We are going to see a nice day on tap with a mixture of sunshine and clouds and temperatures jumping into the lower 60s for both coastal and those inland communities. Get outside and enjoy it while these mild temperatures are here. Heading into the overnight hours tonight, we are going to see clouds start to increase, perhaps some patchy fog in store for us as well, as our overnight lows drop down to the upper 40s and the low 50s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Wake up to Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
And good morning, Carolina. It is a very busy news morning today. I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Jeff Rivenbark. We're glad you're starting your Tuesday with us.
Be prepared and ready to go for the day ahead.
For the time being, we are dry and quiet, but we are dealing with some patchy fog.
And catch up with the overnight news you need to know before heading out the door.
We'll have more details and more live coverage in just a few moments.
Get up early for Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
The Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association serves as the advocate for the building industry, advancing professionalism and promoting community involvement. We are a positive force for responsible growth while protecting property rights and the privilege of home ownership. 3 out of every 5 jobs is touched in some manner by construction in our region. Growth generates jobs, maintains our property values, and builds and updates our infrastructure. Join us Friday mornings for the Construction Connection with the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association and the Big Talker FM.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. Tune in Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. for Objection to the Form, covering civil litigation, real estate issues, and intellectual property. That's Objection to the Form, Thursdays 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Talker Online. You're listening to the most unusual radio morning program that there is available on the planet anywhere. Everybody else is already doing that thing, doing their thing, doing the same thing. We're trying to be a little bit different, and we're trying to keep our conversations and interests, whether they have national and international consequences. We start from home, right here in the southeast North Carolina. Along the coast, we have enough to deal with that we can start there. And the state of North Carolina itself has a number of issues. So if we kind of talk about what's going on right here at home, we can build a better community. And from that better community, better businesses, better opportunities. And unlike most morning radio programs that like to yell and throw rocks, we're trying to turn down the noise, as Andrew would put it. Look for solutions. Talk to the people that are actually smart, people that are on the front lines, people that are dealing with the issues. Get their opinion. What would help? What would be better? How can we shake the bottle a little bit and, see if we can't come up with something new, something that works, something sustainable? How can we be more responsible with the resources we have so that we can be effective for the community that we claim to be? That's all I'm asking. I'm not a smart guy, but that seems to be the entire reason why we have a government structure, a framework within which we can get along. And the original framework was designed with a whole different mindset and society, expected lifespan and population and landmass. We're a lot bigger now. There's 330 million of us. So our representation needs to change. Our understanding of laws and behavior needs to change. What we need to hold account as to what is acceptable behavior in the private sector, in government, as much for either as both. I mean, if you guys want to talk about privilege, one of the first to go should be executive privilege. I mean, you can't hide behind that and do whatever you want. I mean, diplomatic immunity is another one of those I would have an issue with as well. Nobody gets carte blanche. If all men were created equal, as stated in our declaration, how is having different, more equal than others, is that the deal? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That was one of those banned books, wasn't it? We're not going about this right. And with what the mainstream media is constructed to do, it has morphed from what it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s into basically a cash cow of commercial advertisements. The news and information they bring you isn't news and information. What they're bringing you is a reason to click on their icon and buy the stuff they're advertising. That's what it's about. That's why there's no more rules in journalism. These are all opinion talk shows, which, again, this one is one of them. But unlike the others, we are not owned by a corporation or somebody in bed with somebody else and somebody like that. We're a local, completely independent. There's 4 of us, 5 of us involved in this entire project. We span the globe. Well, one of us does. The rest of us sit at home and try to make it all work. Looking at you, Yael. But those are the kind of smart people it takes. And you don't need a lot of them. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why government is so expensive, is that it takes so many stupid people to make one smart person when you could just have one smart person, like having an education person in your Department of Education. That way you don't have to have 1,000 dumb people making up for the one smart person. In the case of Yael, he's like 100 to me. I just stole it, brought it home, and plugged it all in and rearranged it, and okay, I did a lot. But it's not, mine was more physical. What he does is, far smarter stuff than me. Mine's just making sure the right cable goes in the right spot. That's all. The common interest would involve our, communal. Common. There's a reason why these words are related. And the government is meant for us to have a better life that's safe, protected. Our rights are protected. And that's, life, liberty is the pursuit of happiness. Many things that we should be able to accomplish freely. So that infrastructure needs to allow us to do that and be bonded to that. And with the money that we do rake in, the state rakes in, the government rakes in, if it were used more effectively by smart people to make effective change and solve problems, create solutions, we will have a community. And a lot of that's going to start by finding a way to get these uninterested voters into the polls. Because that is our third party, the apathetic party. How do we get them interested, paying attention? How do we get this information started? How do we get these conversations started? How can we work with and develop programs that are going to make things effective? That would be the question. So with what budget we have, is this the wisest investment? We, think of it. We're betting our rent. We're betting our house payment. We're betting our future. We're betting the Memorial Bridge. North Carolina does not have the highest, best record of recruiting business into the area. We saw that with the Vertex rail car fiasco on a smaller scale just in our area. Now we're about to blow that number up in the area using the Community Violence Action Plan as a way of spending this use it or lose it money, federal and other revenue generated. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against some way of addressing crime and shooting and other issues in our area. I just don't know if a grocery store on donated land is more of a hidden scam using government money than it is a solution to community violence. So that would be my question. And the layout that they have is, to me, a little unbalanced. The least funded part is education, which education doesn't necessarily mean teaching them how to use calculus. It could mean teaching them how to use a welder, teaching them how to use a backhoe, teaching them a skill that they can live a decent life on their own sustainably. And that's a scalable concept. It can work for the homeless cats that are peppered around the public library down on 3rd Street. I did not see that somebody called. If you called, please call again. I'm sorry, I missed it. The seat that I'm sitting on is very, very uncomfortable, and I changed positions, and I did not see that you called. I'm very, very sorry. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye as my machine hung up. Maybe I can call him back. That'd be awesome. I don't recognize it, and I don't see a name, so probably a robocaller hitting my call-in deal. But if you're listening, call back, and love to discuss this with you, because if you have a better idea, please. But at least let's get some ideas out here. Let's get something started. How do we approach some of these? I mean, can we all start like making water samples of our area and demonstrating what is in there besides H and O? Right? What percentage of molecules that could be identified as a psychotropic would be in there? Or a mood stabilizer? Or mood elevator? Or erectile dysfunction? All the stuff we really need to be pumping into our bodies by the tons, and the opiates and the painkillers. The country of the magic pill, the magic bullet, the one shot, fix all, cure all, snake oil, imaginary numbers, vaporware. And the thing is, if we had better education at the legislative level, meaning if our legislators knew how to read and could interpolate and maybe ask questions of smart people and say, hey, I don't know much about SSTs. What does this look like to you? And I really hope I get a chance to do that on this show soon, where I can ask a smart person what he thinks of the numbers that this guy was talking about. And don't get me wrong, his accomplishments as CEO of Groupon and all his other previous e-commerce, e-tail trickerations and successes and accomplishments are all legit, man. I mean, that's why the guy drives a much nicer car than I do. He made that pool noodle work for him. But when he starts talking about SSTs, it's like Whoopi Goldberg talking about politics. This is not your field. I did not ask you to change the faucet in my sink. I asked you to play the part in that show, in that movie. Act. That's what you do. If you're a DJ, spin the wheels. If you're a politician, do something. Be effective. Recognize that there's a community that you're supposed to be representing and serving. And if it's about power, we need to rethink this entire program, man. This entire game. Because I cannot unsee the connection that Andrew made, where now it's just MMA in suits. It's just professional wrestling in suits. Because it's about the fight. It's not about the solution. It's about the entertainment. It's about the yelling, the throwing rocks. That's not what I want to brand this show as, or this station if I can avoid it. I'd like it to be finding solutions for North Carolina, Southeast North Carolina specifically. That's our area. That's our community. And this is where it starts. And if I can get the apathetic one-third party non-voters at least interested, start talking to some of these people, say, all right, what's important to you? Would you support a program like this? Is this the kind of candidate you feel represents you? Because it affects everything from our grocery store prices to our infrastructure service and support. I mean, these reports on the bridges that we're using every day are not good. Yes, they're over-engineered so they can endure a lot of stress, but man, we're beyond that already. So in being fiscally responsible and being held to account for the decisions that are being made on our behalf, we're not doing a very good job. And we need to find a way to be more effective in getting our voices heard on what really needs to be dealt with. I can't do it. I'm not a smart guy, but if I knew somebody that was on the transportation department and have them, give them a little bit more power so they can say, wait a minute, before we do that kind of silliness, why don't we look at what's happening over here, because we're in the danger zone. I mean, it's all well and good to build nice, shiny, new stuff, but we have old, freaky, creaky, rusted, busted stuff that needs to be addressed, replaced. It ain't pretty. These ain't pretty words. But the Fern Creek Bridge really should be an eye-opener of, look, we need to be more fiscally responsible with the resources we have. The solution should not be developing another muni or tolling our own highways. Every bridge and every road is going to be a toll bridge now because we were too irresponsible as a community to use our resources wisely enough to maintain public roads for public use. And the people, again, that are going to get hurt are the ones that are already poor trying to make ends meet. Now you're going to charge them to drive on the very roads they're already paying taxes for. And you'll probably raise the taxes on that as well. So we're just going to, at what point do we need to be more responsible with the resources we have to address the issues that are not going to correct themselves? Aging does not go backwards. And if we do get excited about building new shiny stuff and new shiny technologies, a bridge would be a good place to start. If you want to show off your new hybrid metals and structures, materials, composite materials, make a bridge out of it. As with our healthcare system, where it takes a high school team of robotics students to build a bionic arm for a child whose healthcare won't provide one. It's going to take a team of like high school Lego engineers to build us a new bridge. Right? Is that what it's going to take? Is that where we're at? That we have to crowdfund public projects? Is that what's going on? We'll probably have to crowdfund the memorial should something happen. So being proactive on this would be, beginning with fiscal responsibility. And I need to find people who are good at digging into the financial and talking to the people that know this stuff. See if we can't find a way to hold some sort of conversation to say what's going on with this. What's the big idea? I mean, we have too many comparisons and too many failed experiments previously that going into the future, we should, from education and experience, re-examine some of our decisions. Both at the representative level and at the voter level. We need to rethink who's representing us and why. And I think one of the things that really needs to be pulled into scrutiny is this entire land deal on the north side of downtown Wilmington for a grocery store that gets, 10 times? In the neighborhood of 10 times the amount of funding than the educational aspect program of the Community Violence Action Plan. It's a big name chain grocery store going to come in and run this thing that's going to be built with taxpayer money on land donated. Something doesn't smell right, but it's already a sealed deal, and we're going forward with it. That's what the press release is about. $60 million. Fiscal responsibility in action. Some of the components in that plan do make sense, but if you look at the way it's funded, a lot of it is tilted in the wrong direction. And again, I don't have all the ideas, but all the answers, but we have smart people who do. How many of them are involved in this? None of them were involved in that land deal grocery store thing. I'll put a donut on that bet. And you notice I'm not betting my car payment. I'm betting something I can afford to lose. And it's on a bet that's in range with where I am. And North Carolina is not really in a place overall to be spending ridiculous amounts of money on vaporware projects. So the problem is scalable. The solutions must be scalable as well. And I think fiscal scrutiny is a good component in curbing a lot of this. I don't know if we can eliminate it. People are going to be people. Humans are going to do what humans do. And if we want to do anything about it so that it does not impact our community in a negative way, then we as a community need to find ways to make sure it doesn't happen. And we on the Big Talker are very much open to those conversations. If you have ideas that aren't, involving aliens coming in from the sky with a magic wand, we'd like to hear from you. In fact, we look forward to bringing some programming in here that'll help us look at things a little more closely. Sort of get to the answers to some of the questions of how this stuff works and why it works this way. And how it is our government or aspects of it cost as much as they do, and how it is they can toss money around, get into this whole use it or lose it aspect. That doesn't make any sense anywhere. Right? If we were fiscally responsible enough to take a $40 million budget and be effective with it and have money left over, we should be allowed to keep it. And in the next year, if there's still a budget and we can do more with that same money, and we should be allowed to keep it. Because if something happens and a bridge is going under, then we have some money to do something about it. Being fiscally responsible should be rewarded, not fiscal irresponsibility where you have to get rid of this money if you want to get any money next year. We're encouraging bad behavior in our government. And politicians, polls, they are going to capitalize on that. Get it? Capitalize? We're a capitalist in society. There's a reason why these words are related, ladies and gentlemen. The English language is not by accident. And the profitability structure of the political game is not by accident either. As our friend pointed out, it crosses the aisle. The wealthiest people in our legislative branch of the government crosses the aisle. And it's crazy the amount of money that they make in relation to the rest of the world as far as like market and growth and that sort of thing. So fiscal responsibility, fiscal oversight, that's going to be a good... I've always been curious about the money in government. Where's it going? Why would anybody want to do government other than to make money? Because if you can handle that kind of ride, man, you can make some money. Just like starting a religion. It's all about the Benjamins, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to cover more of that on Heard Tell tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock and on the Asylum on the Big Talker online. Thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow. Go out there and vote wisely.
Keeping Whiteville informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM